Stilxits is a military attaché from the Honorable Kexudin Royal Guard, holding a rank equivalent to OF2, Lieutenant Commander. He has been deployed among humans as a military attaché in the Allied Rapid Reaction Army, United Nations, and continues to serve with honor. The human kings, equivalent in rank to generals, rules in numbers, an unfamiliar concept to me, but one I have come to accept. These multiple rulers have now granted me command of my own unit, a decision I welcomed with pride. I am now the lieutenant of a 30-soldier unit under the command of Captain Dorian Vexley. Before writing this report, I had high expectations for Captain Dorian Vexley. I assumed the captain would be a proper military officer, one aligned with the traditions of my own rank as a squire, lieutenant in the Guard, an experienced commander accustomed to leading no fewer than 1,000 soldiers. My expectations, however, were swiftly shattered. Not only did she command a mere 150 troops, a number so small it barely constituted a proper force, but, to my utter disbelief, she was also a woman. Outraged, I wasted no time in seeking an audience with her mid-noble, Colonel. With all the dignity and authority of my station, I voiced my protest. No woman in my proud guard would ever rise to such a rank, and certainly not above me. This, I declared, was an insult to the discipline and structure of a proper military. The nobleman simply stared at me, his expression unreadable, his eyes cold and unwavering. Then, in a tone devoid of emotion, he presented me with two choices: serve under her, or be dismissed from the unit in full military disgrace. I clenched my jaw, swallowed my pride, and chose the former. Now, back to my report. One day, Captain Dorian Vexley summoned her lieutenants, including myself, to her forward base of operations. The purpose of the meeting was clear. We were to plan an assault on a heavily fortified enemy position. When the time came for me to offer my strategic input, I spoke with the confidence of my heritage. There was no need for elaborate planning. The answer was simple. We would do as the Guard had always done, charge forward in a glorious frontal assault, overwhelming the enemy with sheer force and unshakable resolve. The room fell silent. The other lieutenants turned to me, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright horror, as if I had suggested marching unarmed into the enemy's guns. I was about to defend my reasoning when I noticed something peculiar. Captain Dorian Vexley was smiling. Not in amusement, nor in derision, but in a way that sent a chill down my spine. After listening to the alternatives presented by my fellow officers, she leaned forward and, without hesitation, made her decision. We would launch a frontal assault under my plan. There was a stunned pause. The other lieutenants looked at each other, then at her. However, she continued, her tone sharp and commanding. Unlike the suicidal charges they feared, she had no intention of marching us forward like tightly packed ranks of doomed soldiers, slowly trudging under relentless machine gun fire. No, she had a different vision entirely. We would employ fire and movement. Her mortars would rain down hellfire and smoke upon the enemy's fortifications, stunning them and sowing chaos in their ranks. Meanwhile, our units would advance in calculated waves, each covering the next with suppressive fire, systematically forcing the enemy back until we breached their defenses and seized control of their position. Then, with an even darker smile, she spoke of lobbing gifts grenades, explosives, anything that could flush out enemy combatants from their foxholes before securing our final position. The room erupted. The other lieutenants objected immediately, their voices overlapping in a chorus of protests. They called the plan reckless, a death sentence, a needless risk. The enemy was entrenched, their defenses strong. To attack head-on was to walk into our own graves. But Captain Dorian Vexley remained unwavering. She laid out her reasoning with practiced precision. The enemy, she explained, had yet to fully secure the location, meaning their defenses, while formidable, were incomplete. The terrain, too, was in our favor, providing enough natural cover to make fire and movement tactics viable. If we acted swiftly, before the enemy could reinforce their position, we would have the upper hand. She did not demand blind obedience. She simply stated the facts, let them settle, and then waited. Slowly, the protests died down. Grudging nods replaced skepticism. The human kings, generals, had spoken, and so the orders were clear. We were to seize Hill 472, a strategic high ground fortified by the enemy. The hill was a fortress in its own right, trenches dug deep into the earth, machine gun nests placed at key vantage points, and enemy forces well prepared to repel any assault. Logic dictated that a frontal attack would be sheer folly. My instincts as a squire of the Honorable Kexudin Royal Guard screamed for an alternative, a maneuver worthy of military tradition. Yet I had learned by now that human warfare was different. Captain Vexley gathered her officers in the makeshift command tent, the air thick with tension and the scent of burning fuel from nearby vehicles. She studied the maps before her, fingers tracing over the contours of the hill, eyes sharp with calculation. "We will attack as soon as we are ready," she said, her voice unwavering. A murmur of begrudging agreement rippled through the gathered officers. But I recognized that smile. The same one she had given me before, when I had foolishly suggested a traditional charge hours prior. The same one that hinted at a plan more complex than it seemed. "We will advance in staggered formations," she continued. "Mortars will strike here, here, and here, obscuring their vision, disrupting their lines. Machine gun teams will lay down suppressive fire, pinning them in place while our first wave moves up under cover." She tapped the map. "We won't give them time to breathe. Grenades into the trenches. Shock and momentum will carry us through." The other officers exchanged uneasy glances. "Their numbers?" one asked. "Around 200, Vexley replied. "But their morale is uncertain. They're low on supplies, and we've cut off their reinforcements. If we hit them fast, before they realize their disadvantage, we can break them." Silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the nods came. Dawn broke over the battlefield, casting long shadows as we crept into position. The moment the first mortar shell screamed through the air and exploded amidst the enemy fortifications, the battle began. Smoke and dust choked the hillside as we advanced. The humans fought with an efficiency I had come to both admire. And fear, covering fire, bounding movements, discipline honed through centuries of war. The enemy, caught off guard, scrambled to return fire, but by then, we were already upon them. I saw my chance. I hurled a grenade into a machine gun nest, its explosion silencing the weapon before it could tear into our ranks. Another squad stormed a bunker, clearing it with ruthless efficiency. The enemy faltered, their lines wavered, then broke. By midday, the hill was ours. Captain Vexley stood atop the captured ridge, her uniform stained with mud and smoke, surveying the battlefield. She turned to me, nodding once, that familiar, knowing smile on her lips. Later, I got to learn her nickname among our unit. She was called Witch, as she bewitched her men to do impossible missions, while cursing her enemy's plan with her own.